So who are we missing today? I see 7, 8. We're missing Kate. Is Katie in? All right. So I want to share with you something we're going to do today. Second half of class, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to get through our PowerPoint, which will wrap up our chapter 10. And then we're going to do some Regents review. I'm going to give you all a packet that we're going to go over on basically the format for the Regents again for social studies. How many of you know what the format is for the Regents, the high school US History Regents? Have you had any? Okay, with anybody besides me? We haven't talked about it here, but I thought maybe you'd know from other classes. We're going to go over the format for the test after we finish. So if you guys could open up your PowerPoints, your Chapter 10 PowerPoint section, I think we're in 5, right? We left off talking yesterday about Jackson and political equality did not mean economic equality. And Palin, what groups did we say did not have political equality during the period of Jackson's presidency? What groups were left out of that equality? We know that white males expanded suffrage rights, women, Native Americans, and African Americans, okay, especially slaves who have no political equality. Can slaves vote? No. Can free African Americans in most states vote? No. So while white suffrage, does everybody understand what I mean by that word? I take for granted a lot. I don't want to take for granted, but I don't want to assume that you guys know either. Does everybody know when I refer to this term, when I talk about suffrage rights, S-U-F-F-R-A-G, it has nothing to do with pain. Okay, suffrage, what's it mean? What? Suffrage rights refers to voting rights. So when I talk about suffrage rights, we're talking about voting rights, all right? Let's whip through this, and then we'll spend some time doing Regents review and Regents formatting, which will be a good way to end class today. We said also yesterday that Jacksonian democracy is going to see Jackson as a champion of the common man. There's an interesting chart that I downloaded here, a graph actually, and it shows the percentage of voting age population who actually vote in presidential elections. And this is kind of cool. If you look at this would be 1832, okay? And from about 1820, you had about 26% of people who were eligible to vote voted. 26% in 1820. Up to 1832, what number? Almost 80% of people who are eligible to vote are going to vote. And this is a direct correlation to Jackson's expanding suffrage by reducing what requirement? Property ownership requirements. Very good. He expanded voting rights for white males. He promoted the idea of equal opportunity, not equal results. And we're never going to live in a society where we have equal outcomes. We are never going to live in a society. Some people work harder than others. Some people make better choices in their lives. We are never, ever going to be in a situation where everybody's outcome is going to be equal. But Jackson promoted the idea of more equal opportunities. And that is significant, even though some people were left out, Native Americans, African Americans, and women, all right? Jackson and his expanding of suffrage is going to kind of set things on a course that will eventually address the rights of Native Americans, the rights of African Americans, the rights of women. So white males and relaxation of property ownership is going to be huge toward increasing the vote. What percentage, I'm just curious, in a given presidential year, say in your lifetime, what would be, you think, the average percentage of people who vote in presidential elections in our country today?
60.
You say 60, okay? You're not far off. Last few elections have it's been well over 50. This election, I'm watching some of the polling results from some of the states that allow for early voting over the last couple of weeks, and some states are off the charts in terms of the number of people who have actually shown up to vote already in the presidential election in 2024. So I think this year we could be well over 60% people who are eligible to vote participating. Now, we're never going to have 100% of the population voting because there's, people under 18 can't vote, right? People who are not citizens can't vote. So we have 330 million people in our country. Of those 330 million, I would hazard a guess that about 230, 240 million are eligible to vote. Between 230 and 240 million are eligible. If we have 60 or 65% in a given year, that's approaching 200 million. So I think that's pretty impressive. And I think this election, with what's at stake, there's an awful lot at stake with the economy, with immigration, with education, with abortion rights. I have a feeling that this election is going to be off the charts in terms of participation. We'll see. All right. Curious. I know that you all are not of voting age yet, and you will not be able to vote for your first presidential election until 2028. But have any of your parents or family members that are eligible to vote, have they had an opportunity to vote yet? Because a lot of states allow early voting. New York is one of them. Okay, New York is one of them. Voting, the election will take place on the 5th, which is 2 weeks from this past Tuesday, so 12 days. Are you watching? Is anybody watching the polling? Anybody watching the national polling and the state polling? Who seems to have the advantage now? Any news watchers in here at all? Who seems to have the advantage nationally right now in the polls? Not Harris. No, it is moved rather dramatically in the last couple of weeks in favor of former President Trump, at least nationally, and he's holding a lead in 6 out of the 7 swing states. So it's going to be close. It's going to be razor thin. We'll see what happens. All right. Let's continue on. Indian Removal Act. Again, we're doing a recap of the Jackson presidency. Again, all of us, we've studied this. We've learned about it, but just let's recap. Indian Removal Act was his controversial policy to relocate Native Americans west of the Mississippi. Where did they end up on it? Most of them settling? In the west. In what territory or what state today did most of them, or a lot of them, settle? Give me a big O. Oklahoma. Oklahoma. All right. It led to the infamous Trail of Tears. Okay. 16,000 Native Americans, forced march, winter of 38, 39, and 4,000 died along the way, the Trail of Tears. All right. And the consequences for Native Americans were clear. Consequences, their lives were upended, their communities were destroyed, they had to leave behind their ancestral lands. Many of them died. It was a horrible result. I've been on tours in the American Southeast, and there are literally sites along the Trail of Tears that you can see the graves of Native Americans who were buried as a result of dying. Most of the dead would be the very old or the very young, due to, obviously health issues for elderly people being forced to walk 900 miles. It's not going to be easy to do. They didn't get a lot of medical care, and it was not. It's a stain on the American history. It's a stain on the American experience, clearly, for what happened. Another important event in the presidency was the bank war. Just here's what I need you to know, girls and guys, that Jackson's fight against the second bank of the United States was based on his distrust and his feeling that the national bank was not constitutional. He felt that there had been no authority for a national bank to be established. He quite simply viewed the bank as a monopoly that only helped the wealthy. And when you talk about the wealthy, he's talking about wealthy Northerners, industry types, manufacturing types, banking types. He was not someone who looked at the Bank of the United States as a vital necessity. Now, did he tolerate the Bank of the U.S.? He did. But he was not a proponent. He wasn't a strong supporter of the Bank of the United States, which put him, Dylan, at odds with which individual who felt that the National Bank was vital to bring the three sections of the country together. Henry Clay. Okay, Henry Clay and Jackson would have been, well, to use a term, they probably would have been arch rivals. They probably would have not shared a beer and been very happy having a beer together. They would have a lot probably to argue about, as well as some others. So the bank war. Jackson was an opponent of the National Bank. Okay. Also, his presidency is marked by, we say, the nullification crisis. This was a conflict over tariffs between the federal government and South Carolina. Jackson's strong stance on preserving the Union. Now, Jackson intervened when South Carolina threatened to do what, Haley? Jackson actually sent soldiers to South Carolina under the force bill to ensure South Carolina did what? Didn't secede, or did not refuse to obey the tariff. The whole idea that South Carolina was threatening to secede, Jackson was a nationalist in the sense he was not going to openly allow a single state to violate federal law and threaten to secede. So he had a strong stance on keeping the Union together. And we said that secession, earlier this week, secession, South Carolina will threaten it in 1832. They'll back down with the force bill. They'll back down when Jackson sends soldiers. When will South Carolina revisit this topic of secession? Blake. When will South Carolina again be at the center of a secession discussion? After 1832. When exactly? What year?
Oh, what year?
Yeah. Or what event will...
Was like the terrorist?
No. South Carolina, Lizzie, will again open the secession discussion when? 1860 with Lincoln's election. South Carolina will be the first state to officially leave the Union on December 20th, 1860, about a month after Lincoln was elected. South Carolina was first, and then 6 others followed very, very quickly. And then when Lincoln takes office in April or March of 1861, 4 more states, bringing the total number seceding to 7 plus 4 is 11. All right, Palin.
What they did? Were they just two separate things then?
These 11 states that seceded from the Union actually formed what, Alyssa? You had asked this a couple weeks ago. The 11 states that seceded from the Union, where did they go? What did they do? They formed their own what? They formed their own country, the Confederate States of America. And those two countries, the U.S. and the Confederate States of America, will square off in the Civil War. Okay?
And what states were left in the U.S.?
Every northern state.
Oh.
Every northern state.
So this is southern states?
The only states that seceded were slave-holding southern states. All right. Spoil system, and I have a little video on this that I want to watch too. We didn't really talk about this, but Jackson as president, dig this, this is important. Jackson introduced the practice of rewarding supporters with government jobs. And this is in place to this day. Jackson introduced this. When Jackson was elected as president, Jackson promised a lot of his cronies, a lot of his pals, a lot of his buddies, government jobs. Oftentimes, whether they were qualified or not, and more often than not, they weren't qualified. More often than not, and the spoil system was the name that was given to Jackson's policy. Does anybody know why they're going to call this the spoil system? Rewarding supporters with government jobs. Why call it the spoils system? Anybody know? There's an old saying about warfare, to the victor goes the spoils. In other words, to an invading army, this goes back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome. When an army invaded a territory and took over a territory, conquered their people, the invading army was entitled to all the money and all the loot and all of the riches of a civilization that they conquered. And those riches were called the spoils of war. Riches, gold, silver, infrastructure. Sometimes even women were taken as prisoners of war as part of the spoil system. Well, Jackson comes in as president, and Jackson, remember, he's the champion of the what? The common man. He's going to appoint some common man to his White House, to his staff, and most of them were just his drinking buddies or his tobacco chewing buddies, and a lot of them weren't qualified. Some of them were, a lot of them weren't. And this practice is going to continue. It was aimed to make government more responsive to the people. Right? He aimed to make government more responsive to the people. He wanted his government, he wanted his presidency to be able to connect with the common people. So what better way of connecting with the common people than bringing in his common people, his common man friends to serve in his administrations. Now there's pros and cons of that, and we're going to see in the video the pros and cons, and we'll answer the question after the video. But I want to just give you the idea today that this practice is absolutely in effect today as well. When a president takes office, and this is not a criticism, this is just a fact, when a president takes office, the president, male or female, Democrat or Republican, they will typically get rid of all the appointees of the previous administration and bring in their own people. They'll bring in their own supporters, people who see eye to eye with them, people who will help carry out their agenda or carry out their political plans. So the spoils system was something that really will be implemented for the first time large scale by Jackson, and that spoils system to some extent lives on today in a lot of ways. All right, the spoils system. Yes, Alyssa.
So what happened to people that lost their jobs after President elected?
So if the president gets, so Jackson takes office, and he's going to throw out most of the appointees from the other president, the other administration. Those people are pretty much on their own. A lot of them might be able to find jobs in some government capacity, but, you know, to the victor goes the spoils, and unfortunately for the people who are out of job, they're going to have to find something new. They're going to have to find something new. If Trump were to win, to give you an example of how this works, if Trump were to win or Harris were to win in November, one of them are going to win. Do you think that Kamala Harris, if she wins in November, is going to appoint a lot of conservative Republicans to her administration when she takes office in January? No, she's going to bring people in who support her and her plans and her idea. Conversely, if Trump wins, is Trump going to bring in left-leaning liberal Democrats to work in his administration? He's going to bring in people that support him, that have been loyal to him. And that's kind of the policy that we're going to see begin with Andrew Jackson, the spoils system. Let's see how it works. This is my buddy Hip. And he's loud. And I think we've seen him before a couple of times. We'll see.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip US History. I'm dizzy for the learning, and especially for the spoil system, which is the vocab word we're gonna hit you up with right now. So hang on to your hats of learning. We're about to do a little bit of the teaching. All right, here we go. This is a good one. Plus, it's pretty fun to say, the spoils system. Andrew Jackson, 1828, and of course, Jackson is one of the founders of the Democratic Party. This is kind of the remnants of the Democratic Republican Party that's kind of rebirthed itself in the South by expanding voting rights to non-property owners. So sometimes it's kind of an unruly bunch. And that's what occurs in March of 1829 when basically all of these job seekers end up at the inauguration of Andrew Jackson raising holy hell because they want their jobs. And that's what this ends up really becoming about. The spoils system, which is a term that was coined by New York Senator William Macy, to the victors goes the spoils, is the idea that, look, you know, we won the election, we have a right to hire the type of people that we want to get jobs in the federal government. They're really trying to sell it as a good thing because it's like a turnover, and a turnover is good because you get fresh ideas and fresh blood, and that's a great thing. But all in all, it's a negative because really you have incompetence, You don't have jobs based on merit and skill, but based on political promises. At the end of the day, Andrew Jackson ends up replacing 10% of the federal workforce, mostly in the post office. I believe there were 400 or 500 postmaster jobs that were turned over under that Jackson administration. And it's going to be like that for another, 50, 60 years. The spoils system is predominantly how you got a job in Washington. And really, you have political parties promising people favors for their support. Later on, this will be called political machines, Tammany Hall, local politics. Because on a federal level, we're going to try to fix that problem after the assassination of James Garfield in 1883. And Garfield was assassinated by somebody who was seeking a job, who was qualified, who didn't get that job because of the spoils system. So bang, bang, he took care of his problem, but it didn't work out for him. But it worked out for the nation.
Spoils system, the idea of giving government jobs to your supporters, okay? Initiated by President Andrew Jackson, all right? And that's what he said about the inauguration was absolutely true. In March of 1829, when the first day in office for Jackson, the White House was basically overrun by people from all over the country. It was like an open house party. The inauguration ceremony, which typically is a formal, it's like a gown and a tux affair. The White House was overrun by literally people with pitchforks and wearing overalls. That is the kind of party that Jackson had at the White House, to kind of, again, consistent with his idea of representing who? The common man. The common man. Worcester v. Georgia, next recap. It was the Supreme Court case. Gotta know this. Gotta know this. Worcester v. Georgia, 1832, was the case involving the Cherokee sovereignty. The Cherokee, according to the court, had every right to rule themselves, and they had every right to stay in the part of the country where they were. They could not be removed under the Indian Removal Act. Jackson refused to endorse the court's decision. He thumbs his nose in his famous quotation. Jackson says, John Marshall has decreed this. Let John Marshall what? Enforce the law. Enforce the law. So Worcester v. Georgia. And the significance of this is also meaningful in the sense that Jackson ignoring the Supreme Court decision actually served to expand presidential power. Jackson ignoring it basically reasserted the presidency or the executive branch as not so much a co-equal branch of government during his administration, but as a branch of government that attempted to exhibit more power than the other two branches. And you can certainly make an argument that Jackson ignoring a Supreme Court decision by refusing to enforce a law is the president basically trying to usurp or to ignore the power or the legitimacy of one branch of government. I'll give you another scenario where this has been argued. This happened even in the current administration. 2 years ago, President Biden, in a pitch to young voters, had promised to basically forgive student loan debt for millions of college and graduate students. He had promised to forgive student loan, basically wiping their debt off the books. And the Supreme Court, in a later decision, ruled that that was unconstitutional, that the president does not have the right to forgive debt or to remove debt from somebody's record. And nevertheless, after the Supreme Court ruled that way, President Biden and his administration again tried to forgive some of the student loan debt, challenging, in effect, the authority of what branch of government? The judicial branch of government. Okay? So, Worcester v. Georgia, very significant decision in 1832 regarding the Cherokee. Let's talk about economic policies of Jackson and the Panic of 1837. Let's look at our author video on this topic. Author video on the economic depression in the late 1830s.
During the final year of Andrew Jackson's presidency, he pushed through Congress two important pieces of economic legislation that had the unintended and unwanted effect of generating a massive national depression. The first of these was the Distribution Act, whereby Congress agreed to distribute the federal budget surplus each year to the state governments. While that sounded fine in theory, it caused all sorts of complications because state banks, in the absence of a national bank, had those federal dollars in their bank vaults. So as those dollars were withdrawn from state banks experienced a crisis. They didn't have cash in their vaults. The second act was called the Specie Circular of 1836. Specie was a 19th century word referring to currency, gold and silver.
So, Mr. Callahan, I'm gonna put you on the spot, just like I normally put Katie on the spot. What would the Specie Act, what did it say about gold and silver? Jackson said what with the Specie Act? Talked about it yesterday.
That like there'd be no more paper currency.
Yeah.
Just be used gold, silver.
Jackson said that the federal government would best operate using gold and silver, hard money, specie, okay? And that is gonna disrupt the economy because during his presidency, the National Bank, the Bank of the United States, is issuing what? Paper money. People depend on paper money, okay?
Silver. And the Specie Circular required that all government land sales be transacted in coins, gold or silver coins, rather than paper money. This had the effect of contracting the money supply at the very time that the nation needed more money in circulation. So those two acts, the Distribution Act and the Specie Circular, had the unwanted effect of generating a widespread national depression that Martin Van Buren, the presidential successor to Andrew Jackson, had to confront and deal with.
Yeah, Jackson handed off the presidency to Van Buren, and Van Buren, a New Yorker. Okay, Van Buren suffered the consequences of this policy and was crippled from his presidency, really not physically crippled, but his presidency was damaged, was crippled by just inheriting the situation. Let's finish up with making progress here. Legacy of Jacksonian democracy. We've got 2 slides left. Real quick. He expanded political participation for white males. That's a biggie, okay? He expanded political participation for white males by reducing property ownership requirement, okay? So by the end of his presidency, Jackson had virtually assured that if you are a white male living in the United States, whether you had a lot of land and a lot of money, or whether you were a simple farmer who didn't own a nickel, you pretty much all had, white males had the right to vote. That was his legacy. He strengthened the power of the presidency, certainly with his decisions and his ignoring of the Supreme Court. For good or for bad, he strengthened the power of the presidency. He increased tensions over slavery and over states' rights. He supported states' rights. He was a slave owner himself. He supported the idea of states being able to determine their future. Palin, you okay?
Yeah.
All right. Your head was, every once in a while I'll look and I'll see something that kind of frightens me. Your head was slacked down. The only thing I didn't see was drool coming out of your mouth.
No,
All right?
I felt dizzy.
All right, you're good?
Yeah.
All right. Anyhow, all right, you gave me a scare there, girl. All right. He increased tension over slavery and states' rights, and Jackson's presidency, the final 2 things I just want to talk about, and I've mentioned this a lot, his presidency is characterized by not only expanding voting rights for white males, but for being openly hostile toward what 2 groups? What 2 groups? Donna. African Americans and Native Americans certainly would be 2 groups that Jackson would not have a lot of love for, nor would his policies be policies that would be welcome among Native Americans or African Americans. All right. Reflection. Jackson's America. Inequality between rich and poor is going to get wider. Democracy is expanded, but not for all Americans. So just understand that Jackson's democratization, there's that long D word we talked about last week, democratization is important. It's not something that we need to gloss over, but it was democratization for really only American men, American white males, all right? So there you have Jackson's America. You will have, we'll spend some time reviewing on this. We're gonna have a test in a couple of weeks that will include a lot of stuff in this topic. But for now, you can close up your PowerPoints. I'm gonna give everybody a copy of this packet, and I'm gonna project this up on the board. And while we're looking at this, feel free to mark this up. You can write on this. You can take notes on it. This is going to be the format for your exam in June. And yes, your exam is June. I think the date is what, June 20. It's a ways off, but it's never too early to start planning. All right, so let's look at page 1. Let's look at page 1 of your My Strategy. First thing we're going to look at is the outline. What the exam is going to look like. So what's on the exam? We're going to review the important information below about the U.S. history regions. As you review, make sure to star or highlight items that you may forget and take any notes that you will find helpful to remember. So sections of the exam, first off, okay? First off, let's look at sections. Tell me, please, that my pen better work. Does pen better work? Doesn't work. All right, we'll figure it out. Part 1 is your first part of the exam. We're going left to right. Part 1 is going to consist of 28 multiple choice questions. 28 multiple choice questions. Each question is going to be worth a point. And here's the good part. I like this, and students tend to like it. The questions are going to be generally in chronological order, meaning that your 28 multiple choice questions are going to go in the sequence in which we learn the material throughout the course of the year. Now there might be an outlier, there might be a straggler that might not be chronological, but generally speaking, the questions are going to be chronological. The first couple of questions will address stuff from the beginning of the year, and the latter 28 questions will address stuff we've covered at the end of the year. And because I teach history linearly, in a line, because I teach history in a line, like if history was a timeline, older events are going to be on the left of the timeline, newer events are going to be on the right. I think you'll find that chronological questioning oftentimes is going to be helpful. Sometimes your multiple choice questions actually will be very, very helpful in you answering questions later in the exam related to maybe documents or because the multiple choice questions are going to kind of jog your memory about other topics. So the first part of the test is 28 multiple choice questions. 4 answer choices. 4 answer choices for each question. Okay? Most of our testing that we'll do here this year, aside from the inquisitives, when you answer the questions on your weekly inquisitives, how many answer choices are there?
Looks like it's different questions.
There's 5 on most inquisitive assignments, 5 answer choices. The inquisitives, in other words, I think are tougher than the types of questions that you're going to see on the regions. In my own opinion, 5 multiple choice answer selections, I think, makes it a little bit tougher. Your regions is only going to have 4. And we're going to work on strategies this year to help you eliminate answer choices that you know don't fit. There's an approach, and I'm sure this is nothing new to a lot of you, even in your other classes, math and science and the like. One strategy to employ when answering multiple choice questions is to, when you're looking at a question, eliminate the choices that you know are why. Yeah, scratch them off, mark it up, get rid of them, blacken them out, okay? And then use the process of elimination. If you have to guess on one, I'd rather guess on 1 out of 2 than have to guess on 1 out of 4. So get rid of the choices that you know don't fit. Now your second part of the exam is going to be 2 short essay questions, okay? 2 short essay tasks. I'm going to give you examples of this, and we're going to practice these a lot. Starting second marking period, you're going to have one assignment a week that's going to be regions related. So we're going to start to ramp up the work outside of class after the end of the first marking period. But part 2 of the exam are 2 short essay tasks. You're going to basically be given some short, some documents, historical documents, and you'll have to write short essay answers on those. And the third part of the exam is going to be your civic literacy document-based questions, and then your civic literacy document-based essay. You're going to be given a series of documents, usually 6, and you're going to have to look at the documents and answer questions based on the documents, and then you're going to use those documents to write a civic literacy document-based essay. Not totally unlike what you did last year. Did all of you take Global 2 last year? So you all took Global 2 and you had a DBQ for, what was the topic? Do you guys remember what the topic was? What? Yeah.
It was like, they gave us 5. They gave us 5 different documents and you have to pick them.
Okay. Well, for us, for this, you're going to have to do a civic literacy essay, which basically is going to address a constitutional or civic issue. We're going to practice as we go through. I don't want anybody to be overwhelmed, but here's what I'd like you to do for Monday. Not for tomorrow, but for Monday. I would like you to go through this packet that I've shared with you, and I would like you to look at some of the questions on page 2 and the questions on page 3, and I want you to kind of fill this out, okay, for Monday's class period. A couple of things that will help you with this. You will have 3 hours for your Regents exam. Most of you will not need 3 hours. You're going to think to yourself, I can do it in 2. I can do it in 1 hour and 45. I'm going to ask you right now. I'm going to ask you right now to take every ounce of time that they give you on this exam to complete it. That means if you're given 3 hours, take 3 hours. If you're given extra time due to a 504 or an IEP, take advantage of the extra time. Because each of these tasks is important to help you get your best score. What I don't want to see happen is, yes, Haley, question?
Just like about the test, are we gonna be taking the same readings as the other global?
You are taking the exact same regions that the other global class will be taking. You'll be taking it in the same location. The only thing that's different between the Clint and Mr. Busher's class and you all is that you're learning at a different pace, and you're learning maybe not the exact same information on the same day, but we're all, Busher's class and my class are all kind of gearing you toward that Regents exam in June. What's different is that when you complete my class the first semester and second semester, you get your Regents score at the end of the year, you're going to get a Regents diploma, and also you're going to get 6 college credits for completing this class that the other kids will not be obtaining. So the college credits is kind of your baby. I want you to remember there's 3 hours for the exam. One of the things that I'm asking for on this assignment here on page 2 and 3, I want you to come up with a plan on how many minutes you want to devote to each of the 3 sections on the exam. Remember, you have 3 hours, so ballpark would be about 45 minutes on each of the 4 parts. You've got the 28 multiple choice, you've got the short essay, you got the civic literacy document-based questions, and the civic literacy essay. If you do 45 times 4, what's 45 times 4? 180 minutes is how many hours? 3 hours. Okay. So please complete this for Monday.
It asks us what things are. Have a good day. Read it.
Say that again.
On the second page, it asks us which is the most contact or something like that. I don't know.
Can you just give me 1 second on this? I'm right there. Haley, what question?
Oh, the one at the top. It just asks you to check the boxes which has the most contact.
So answer the question to reflect on your understanding of 3 parts. Most frequently, oh, it's telling you. It's telling you what the most frequently tested content is going to be.
I thought it was going to
No, it's telling you
Oh,
that.
so I just click which one's the most common?
Yep. You wanna click, those are the 8 most tested areas, you're gonna tell me which two you're most concerned with.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, then that's fine, you can leave a blanket.
Yeah. Are we doing that at the end of the year too?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Elise, where are you at? See you girls. Elise, do you need me?
Happy birthday. At the end of the day, I don't want it because it makes it.
Because you want to get out of here quick at the end of the day? Alright. Well, in not doing that, you're tempting people to do exactly what they did.
Hello.
Dude! My class is really like this and I really liked it. Please do me a favor. Be careful taking it home. Because I almost dropped it.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
careful taking it home.
Yeah, I will.
Thanks, Corbin.
Yep.
Have a good night.
You too.
See you, bud. See you too, buddy. You too, brother. Good night.
Sorry if I don't get it done. If I don't finish it tonight, can I maybe finish during?
Serious? Yeah, sure.
I finished all my articles. It was handed in today. Wait, I already did that.
book face. And they're supposed to be holes. What? I didn't know it was gonna happen. I didn't know it was going to happen.
No, it's looking at them like how is
Yep.